2. And we have all members of council present this afternoon. We also have our CAO, Deepak Joshi, with us, and our planning assistant, Heather Stanek. We also have Public Works Manager Greg Elson here with us today. And with that, I will ask for the resolution to adopt the agenda, please.
Just a little slow coming up, Madam Mayor.
Fine.
Resolve the agenda for the meeting be adopted as circulated with the noted additions. New other business, 6.9, grass cutting, walking trail hydro lands. Communication for information, 9.3.4, Arma Springfield. Public hearings, 13.1.2, written representation received, as well as a second written representation, 13.1.2.
Thank you for that. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bazarowicz moves, Councillor Strang seconds. Any further discussion or additions or deletions for the agenda this afternoon? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We will do the confirmation of the minutes, and we have 2 sets of minutes, the regular meeting from June 23rd and the special meeting from July the 21st. And if I could have the resolution, please.
Resolved, the minutes of June 23rd, 2020 regular meeting of council and July 21st, 2020 special meeting of council be adopted as presented.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Spicer, Councillor Horvath seconds. Any further discussion? Corrections, deletions, additions? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, that takes us to number 4 on our agendas, which is our delegation. Mr. West, you are here to talk about the ditches on Rockhaven Road. Perfect, thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor Fuglecorn and councillors. Thank you for giving me some time on my agenda today. For those of you that, again, don't know me, my name is Glenn West, and I'm a resident, long-term resident in St. Clements. And I'm just here on behalf of the residents of Rockhaven Road in between that stretch that we have between Highway 44 and the tracks. And what I'm here to do is bring a petition forward to you to request that the ditches be cleaned and leveled. Just a quick question is, I did send a letter in with that petition to the RM. Did you guys have a chance to view it? If not, I have a copy for you.
Yes, we do have it on our
Okay.
dockets this afternoon.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was dated July the 1st, and it was from
Yep.
yourself, and then the petition is attached to
Great,
it.
no problem. I had copies in case
Yeah.
everyone didn't have a chance to see it. So for a number of years, many years in fact, I know a number of us, including myself, we call the RM from time to time, typically in high rain or during the springtime to see what can be done with the ditches, because that's usually the panic point. I realize in reality that the time to have a chat is not during the panic point, but times like now when, of course, you're not getting the phone, not ringing off the hook from a number of different places. So again, I'm here today to have that calm, rational discussion with you. So what we've done is we've had a chat with our residents, and I guess it was a little more profound in spring with COVID on, because we all had a chance to walk down the streets together, wave at each other and chat. And in that discussion, we all realized we're all calling the RM to see what can be done with the ditches. So I had agreed on behalf of the community to put a petition together, which you obviously have a copy of. And then I went around and commissioned support for that petition. So I think there's roughly 35 signatures on that petition, and pretty much everyone signed it, with the exception of two households. One household, one of the people in the family was dealing with a health issue, and they were in Toronto. They wanted to sign it, but couldn't. They just weren't here. And in the other case, that particular yard site's built like Fort Knox, so I couldn't get in to talk to them. So, but with that, with the 2 exceptions, everyone else on that stretch of road has signed the petition and agrees that something needs to be done. As I said earlier, in fact, many of them had tried to call the RM to get some resolution to their concerns. So why does it matter? Is in the springtime, there's extremely poor runoff, so the rate of melt versus the rate of drainage is not appropriate, such that what happens is the water builds up, fills the ditches first, and then it starts pushing back into many of the yards on that stretch of road. In fact, a number of us have swales, but it doesn't work. In fact, it acts in reverse, because what happens, because you have a swale, now it's just an easier way for it to get back into your yard. yard as opposed to getting out of your yard, which is what it's supposed to do. The other, I guess the concern there, to explain a little better, is that there's a number of yards where it's encroaching towards the houses, so people are concerned about their house itself. And then on top of that, many of us, in fact all of us down that road, would have fields. And of course, if your fields get saturated, that doesn't turn out very well either. So that's the other concern, is for excessive water for weeks, if not a month on end in some years, it definitely causes a lot of concern for the fields as well. The third part of that is with standing water, particularly through the warmer months, is that although it's been dry this year, but in normal years, or perhaps in a slightly wetter year, in normal years we also have standing water because of the ditches, and then what that does is causes excessive mosquito larvae and build up of mosquitoes and nuisance mosquitoes, and it just doesn't make it very palatable to be in your yard in the summer when ideally we should be enjoying our yards. So for the benefit of telling you what the landscape is like down the road, is if you were to ride your bike down the road and kind of get a quick view of the ups and downs, that literally is what it is. It's not like a nice level, if you took a transit and shot the line, it would be nice and level and straight. You've got everything. I have probably second or third deepest ditches on the road, and there's a couple others that are fairly deep, but beyond that, most of the other ditches, they've been slowly, whether the farmer way back in the day plowed it that way and it just never got properly dug out, or whether it's over the years the foliage and leaves and whatever else is built up. The point is you drive down the road and you got everything kind of going like this all the way down the road. In the odd case, there's the odd culvert that is just in the wrong place. It doesn't matter what you do, that culvert is just not going to be agreeable to having water move through it. It's just too high, just not going to work. So also on our road, if you can imagine, if this is 44 and this is the tracks, there's a massive ditch down by the tracks. It can handle every drop of water down that road. Unfortunately, it can't get there. So part of the issue is on the north side of Rockhaven, on the, what I would call the west side of the road. Water actually has to go back up the road, across this little tiny culvert, and cross the road, and then come back down the road into the ditches. Similar to the other side, it comes down that road. And I believe on the other side of the other half, the side closer to 44, the water actually goes to 44, runs down 44, and comes down and hits those ditches eventually. But the biggest issue is it just cannot get to those ditches. If, again, if it could be leveled, that would be a significant step. A couple of culverts leveled out, and I think we'd be in the right place. So, again, as residents, we absolutely don't mind paying the taxes. We realize it's for the betterment of our road, for the community. No issue with that. We just occasionally look a little love back our way, and just like to get a few small things done from time to time. Any questions on what it's
Yeah, I was
so
just
far?
going to ask Council, did anybody have any questions for Mr. West? Go ahead, Councilor Boulanger.
You kind of answered my question. I had a question I was asking. I was going to say, the water's obviously got to go partly towards 44 and partly towards the tracks. So the water on Rockhaven's going to have to go in two different directions, so, right?
Right
That's
now,
kind of what you said.
right now it does.
Yeah.
If the ditches were properly graded, it could actually just go straight down 44 right to the tracks and into those massive
Okay.
ditches.
Okay.
That wouldn't be an issue. I should also mention one other thing. For those of you that might remember, is when the floodway was being built, they actually shut that bridge down, and actually our road was actually the bypass. And so what they did to accommodate that so people didn't get hurt by the extra vehicle traffic is what they did on the south side of the road is they put in a gravel walkway, probably about, maybe that wide. And over the years, it hasn't been maintained, which is fine, but the point is it has been maintained, but the gravel is slowly starting to migrate and ingress into the bottom, which again takes up capacity, and further to that, of course, it's also starting to get into the culverts themselves, which again affects capacity a little bit. So the truth is, very, very few people walk down that gravel way off the side of the road. Now that the traffic's back to, or has been for a few years now, back to normal, they walk on the road. It's just smoother, easier. So whatever the reasons are, they just walk on the road. So quite honestly, if the ditches are going to be cleaned, that could just be taken out to them, because most people, and in fact, they can't. What has also happened is all of the weeds and grass and everything else is built up, and people can't really cut it because it's gravel. You're not going to damage your mower trying to maintain it either. So it's just become a bit of a pain in the backside for that side of the road. So.
Okay, Councilor Corbis.
I'm familiar with this area. Well, years back I was door knocking in that area. And in the west south corner, those guys get flooded in there every year. And Councillor Sutherland, I had talked to him about it before, because he knows about it there in the back. There's a way that that water kind of gets trapped in the back there and it can't move out or whatever. And then when I became on council, I had talked to Public Works about it too, how they could move that water in the back there, but it's low-lying land, and we kind of got, like, some neighbors were building it up, and it was causing hardship on the other sides too, and they kind of get, like in the spring, it's bad there. I've been through there, I've seen it all back up in there and that, so.
You're absolutely right. So in talking to the people as I was going through to do the petition, there's 2 houses on the end. I think there's been some relief right on the end, but as you get in a couple more houses past that, it's still an issue. In fact, the neighbor that's literally right across the street from me, he mentioned that he was going to get a swale put in, and when they had the transit done to have a look at things, the guy told him, don't bother, because the water's going to come back into your yard, not go the other way, just because it's so low in the back there.
But I think a couple of years back, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years, they did do something there. They did
Yeah,
try to
on
relieve that.
On that end, there's a
Yeah.
couple houses on the end. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but you're right,
Yeah.
there was some relief work there.
Yeah,
And in fact, last year, I was all optimistic because last year, right along the tracks, I had called again, as usual, every year, and what I was told is, yeah, they're going to come and do the ditches. Well, what they did was they came down and they cleaned out those massive culverts right along the railway track, which is appreciated. However, nothing was done on Rockingham to get the water to the track. So when my wife said they're not coming back, like after the ditches were done right along the tracks there, I said, no, they got to be coming back. This didn't fix anything, and sure enough, they came back. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Councillor Strang?
Sure.
You just made a comment about the sidewalk there. Do
Yes.
the kids not use it for school bus or anything during the daytime? I know maybe not right now that families aren't walking on it, but
Right.
you said it could be pulled out, but
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not, just to be clear, it's not sidewalk, it's just really a patch of gravel.
it's more of a
about
path
3
I
feet
see
wide.
when driving back.
Yeah, that's really what it is. So there is actually, coincidentally, there's a daycare, a home daycare that is maybe one or 2 houses over kitty corner to me. So I actually see them standing in the driveway, not on that gravel walkway. So to answer your question, I wouldn't think so.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bowen.
I just want to make a comment, and I'm sure you're aware, if any work is done in there in the future, it could end up being quite an extensive job in terms of a lot of culverts are probably going to have to be lowered. And if you're lowering culverts, now you're removing right-of-ways, you're removing driveway entrances. So it could be a pretty large project to get the water to move appropriately.
Yeah, I realize that. In fact, I would suggest that has to happen for a few
Yeah.
culverts. They're just too high. Just no way water is going to move past them. It just is not going to happen.
but that cost would be the homeowner's cost, wouldn't it, if a new culvert or pipe would go in, Greg? Is that how that works?
Up until now, we've actually, with a part of a drainage job, we've paid for that cost. The RM has.
Yeah, and again, we were hoping that would be the case only because, again, we don't mind paying taxes, but every year we pay, which, again, we don't mind. So we're hoping that, again, these ditches haven't been done for 20-plus years. Like I've been there 15, just over 15, talking to my neighbors who've been there 20-ish, 30 in one case. It's been easily 20 years since anything was touched. So, and again, compared to the other services we get, again, we don't ask for a whole lot. So we're hoping that would be the case.
Yeah, I'm just we have our Public Works Manager, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just gonna ask Greg if he has any plans to do anything on Rockhaven this year, or where it's kind of fitting into the program, or?
Not specifically in the area that we're talking about. Other than we would put it on, right now, we would have it on the survey list to be surveyed, and then we would go from there. Then there would be a drainage license requirement, so I don't see any ditching this year because there's a time delay there. But possibly surveying, and I only say possibly because we are getting more and more booked with the survey work that we have. But it is very possible we could do the survey.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, that sidewalk, I guess we'd call it, that walkway that was put in the ground, you mentioned it's not used.
Yeah, I won't say never, but
Just
rarely.
a question, yeah, like that's, everybody that you've talked to, like just in case we, when we do the ditching there, you may say it's okay, but
Right,
there could be half a dozen residents that say, well, because if we had to make the ditches to have more capacity for the water, if we did take it out, if it's not used, are most of the residents okay with it not being there, that walkway?
again, I didn't specifically ask him that question,
Yeah.
but
okay.
I'm thinking given the cost benefit of drainage versus not drainage, and the fact that, again, most people I see are walking on the roads, riding on the roads, rollerblading on the roads, I just can't imagine that. Short of maybe, again, I don't know, the odd one might complain, but I just can't imagine that
Yeah.
anybody would
We'd have to
complain.
have a consensus there, because
Yeah.
if we did take it out, well,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, again. like
So
I
with
say,
the
I
people
didn't-
you've talked to, most people, you don't really have any idea how many people are for it or needs to be?
I didn't specifically ask him that.
Yeah, okay, just
Like I
want
say, I go by just empirical evidence, being that if they wanted to use it, they would be on it. Because they're on the road, I'm doing the math quickly in my head, thinking they're not walking on it, they're walking on the road, so.
Yeah, I understand. Just- Okay,
And like I say, I know from a homeowner being myself, that gravel would be a pain to maintain, like trying to cut the grass, weeds, whatever's on it. Yeah, I personally, I would rather have it on if it was me, if I was on that side of the road. So,
well, it did
Go ahead.
diminish the capacity of the ditches when it was put in
Somewhere,
there.
yes, somewhere. yes.
And it does slowly silt it into the bottom of the ditch somewhere,
For sure.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the most time I've ever seen it used was when people are ripping down their lots, so.
Okay, anybody else have anything that they would like to add? I guess what we'll do, Glenn, is we'll probably have some further discussion
Okay.
after, and if there's anything that needs to be relayed, there'll be something coming from the CEO directly to
Okay.
yourself, and we will talk to Greg and see if there is something that, at least the worst spot perhaps, like you said by the track, there's a really bad spot, and perhaps we could look at maybe doing something just to alleviate that for this year, I don't know.
Yeah, well, the track was done.
Was
It's-
okay?
It's trying to get it to the track.
To the track,
So,
okay.
yeah, I don't think there's any one location, it's just a lot of,
Right,
it just slowly builds up from house to house to house, it
Yeah.
just can't move.
yeah. Well, and too, with the placement of the culverts, if they're not in the correct place, that
For sure.
stops it up. And as Greg mentioned, I mean, we just can't go in there and do it, we need a drainage license.
For sure.
And that sometimes takes some time, so, but we'll look at it, and if, like I say, if there's anything that Deepak can forward to you, we definitely will.
Okay, so I'll leave you with two things. First off, thanks for your time today. And secondly, I'll leave you with a request, is that I understand if something cannot be done this year, of the survey. I understand that, but perhaps I'll leave with you that if you could pass a motion in principle that the survey be done this year and then the work is done next year, I'm sure the residents would be happy with that, so.
Okay,
I look forward to all your response.
very good. Thank you very much for coming in today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
See you.
Is Greg staying around for a bit, Mr. CEO?
Greg can stay around, if you'd like to ask him further questions of Greg, you can.
Okay.
If not, we can move to the next item on the agenda.
Okay, go ahead, Greg, did you want to
Well,
add
did
a couple of
you,
things?
well, I first wanted to clarify, is there some in camera?
Yes, I do need you for the in-camera.
So that's like later?
That's
Yeah, okay, so I'm here.
So don't run away.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now we'll move down to new and other business,
I just-
and that is number
I can
6.
just step out for now? Is that okay, Deepak? Sorry.
New and other business.
Communications for action.
Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Number 5, communications for action, the Manitoba Association of Municipal Emergency Coordinators, and there is a conference on September 16th. And I think that one was open to everybody. Municipal emergency coordinators, and it will be for, I did read it somewhere.
councils, CAOs, and
Thank
team
you.
members.
Thank you for that. So basically, is there anybody, I believe Tyler will be going to this. Was there anybody from council that was interested to attend this? And it's at the Polo Park Inn on September the 16th, and they don't have a time as yet. I don't believe it was in here. Any interest?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Is there any COVID stipulations that they are allowed to start having conferences or anything?
Well, I think probably what is
Happening
happening,
outside?
I think what is happening is, I know that I was at a meeting the other day, and as long as you can social distance and you're within the COVID guidelines, and I believe it's 50 inside and 100 outside, and you can follow the social distancing, it is going to start opening up a little bit. But, I mean, we were all kind of tuned in last week when the province came down with, stage 4, which they kind of pulled back on. So between now and September the 16th, it could be opened up to more than 50 people inside. Go ahead, Deepak.
They did specifically state that they will be accommodating all current health protocols, and will also, they've secured a large space, as well as they will be providing masks if you need them as part of the presentation. And I would, to add, I would hope the emergency preparedness coordinators are better at providing this, because it will be critical.
Okay, so I did ask, and I believe Councillor Bazarowicz put up his hand. Is there anybody else from council who is interested in attending this one? I think put my name down. I don't know, it's still a ways away, and I don't know that you'll have to register right away. Maybe if you are going to register, just check to see what happens if we have to cancel the registration. Go ahead, Councillor Strang.
There's no price yet or on the course too, because
There is, I'm sorry, it's not on the
Okay.
invitation, but I thought that question might come up. And for non-members, it's $195.
I would think that Tyler.
Tyler is a member, so Tyler will get the discount.
Right.
It's only a $10 difference.
Okay, if there's no one else that is interested, I'm going to ask our CAO to read the resolution, please.
Resolved, Mayor Debbie Feeblecorn and Councillor Glenn Basarowicz be authorized to attend the Manitoba Association of Municipality Emergency Coordinators Conference at the Canada Inn Polo Park on Wednesday, September 16th, 2020.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Belanger, Councillor Strang, seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the reason I asked about perhaps canceling the registration, that's the same day as the RRPD regular meeting, so depending on what time the conference is, I may or may not end up going, so. Okay, the AMM invitation for the annual convention, which is going to be a little different like many other events this year. It is going to be, it looks like it's only going to be a one day, and it is going to be a virtual event on November the 23rd. So again, I think, I guess we would all have to register because of the voting for the executive elections and on the resolution. So I would imagine we would each have to register rather than how we have been doing it is Deepak registers and then some of us come here to watch whatever it is. So I would just like to confirm that. So once it is open, I don't know if the registration is open, but I would think that that probably is the way that we would have to do it for this year. This one, no, because you're going to watch it from home. So.
Maybe it's a sign of things to come.
yeah, that's why I was surprised at the other one, that's why I questioned.
Yeah.
They
So
don't-
maybe the other one, they're not expecting a big crowd because I think they said somewhere in here that,
1,300.
yeah, that there could be up to 1,300 people. Like that's a lot of people for the AMM conference. So I could see it, 1,300 compared to 100. So we'll just leave that for now, I think. I don't believe that we need to have a resolution, or did
We-
you want a resolution for?
We have a resolution
Oh,
prepared,
okay,
Madam Mayor,
perfect, thank you.
and the resolution is, oops, I'm sorry, the wrong one. Resolved, Mayor Feeble-Corn and all councillors be authorized to attend the Association of Manitoba Municipalities Annual Conference virtually on Monday, November 23rd, 2020.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Spicer, Councillor Sutherland seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And of course, Deepak, you will be joining us on that virtual call also.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, now we can go to number 6 on our agenda, new and other business. The first one we have is 116 Grand Beach Road, and there was a letter of concern there. And I'm not sure, Deepak, did you want to speak to this one? I think it's kind of been, not that it's been resolved, but I think we kind of are all a little bit wiser as to what is happening there, so.
There's been a concern, and rightfully so, that there are individuals growing inside a building to the amount that it has negative impact on some of the neighbors with toxic fumes, as some would describe them, or even with noxious odors. The concern is that there's, how can this happen when there are zoning and building permit requirements on most things? The situation here is that when cannabis was legalized, there were 2 streams put in place. One was the coordination through the provincial governments, which was to dictate the commercial sales and the commercial growing of cannabis. And that is controlled within the zoning bylaws of various municipalities, and there was even opportunities for municipalities to restrict it outright. In the case of personal growth, it falls under the Health Canada. Under Health Canada, you can receive a grower's license individually from the federal government, and the rules are that you can have up to 4 individuals per household that can have a growing license. Each person that has a license to grow for personal medical purposes under Health Canada are also allowed to be able to grow for someone else, for one other surrogate. So theoretically, you could have up to 8 licenses growing inside one residence. We did some basic investigation, average amount allowed for individuals to grow for personal health reasons is somewhere around 2.7. Understanding that some are below 2.7 grams and some are, that's daily use, or some are significantly above 2.7. And so, but on an average of 2.7, that allows you up to 10 plants per person. With 8 growing licenses, that goes to 80 plants in the house. That now is a very significant impact. I could understand some of the concerns that the councillors brought forward and the residents, and I think it should be something that could be addressed. I've had some discussions, and most likely because it's a medical situation, our CMP cannot address this, neither can the municipalities. This is a Health Canada issue. The appropriate methodology that could be used, and we just had a discussion on this just earlier, is AMM, Association of Municipalities, or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, could approach the federal government to review its health requirements so that it begins to look at limiting what can be grown into these single-family dwelling type situations. Because when you have a personal growth license, you can impact anywhere. And you don't need, and due to freedom and health protection of information, it's difficult to get any information as to what was approved or who it was approved for. And that's difficult for us as well as for even enforcement entities such as the RCMP and the police.
So in a nutshell, it's legal.
Correct.
So really, there's nothing at this time that we could even do about it.
If council so wishes, my suggestion is that council could approach through FCM to approach the federal government to make the appropriate changes to the Health Act itself.
Okay, I see a couple of hands up, Councillor Belanger and Councillor Spicer.
A couple of things. I guess we're going to notify the concerned complainant from the community and let them know what we found out, I'm assuming. And number two, it would be nice to know if there was a federal component on our part that we could call if the federal government is licensing these things. I'm not going to even use the word assume. One would think that they'd have somebody from the federal side that could visit these locations and then make sure and assure that they have proper, whatever it is that they need.
They can't even check sewage, you know how big this is, how many of these are.
So, and again, we talked about this earlier, that when this first came up, we all knew these types of things were gonna come up within our municipality that we were gonna be getting complaints on. This is just one of many. It just seems like it's this wild west in terms of the way this has been allowed. And when I say wild west, I mean, there's no checkpoints. There's no entity that can go there and visit and say, you've got the improper ventilation, you've got the improper wiring, you've got the improper whatever it is. It's just Wild West, giddy up, grow it, who cares about the community? That's my frustration. And A&M is one way of doing it. To me, that's a long way to do it. It would be nice to know if there was a shorter process. That's all my question.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Belanger. Councillor Spicer.
Short question and a long question. So the short question is are these 4 people living in this building? Do they need to live in this building in order for this to happen?
They have to live in the building, it is a residence. I gave you an example of the situation that could occur. I have no idea whether there's 1 person living here, or 2, or 3, or 4. We don't even have the right to ask the question.
Which then gets back into what Councilor Belanger said.
80 plants.
The second thing is, so for clarity here, we're talking the federal government, the grandparent, says it's okay, gives them a license. So the province's guidelines for planning don't matter. The municipalities, zoning, and development plans don't matter? Is that what we're saying?
No. What we're saying is, when the federal government legalized cannabis, they allowed the ability for health purposes to be governed by them and was not part of the regulations that the province of Manitoba or the municipalities dealt with. So Health Canada regulations associated with personal growth do not fall under those regulations at all, and that legalized, because you were allowed to grow even previously under health. And so what this is the province, in the province of Manitoba, you're not allowed to grow any for personal purposes at all. So it's very straightforward. And for commercial, you have to have a license with the province, and you have to have the zoning approval. And so it's managed with the commercial. The only thing is, there was an ability to do this before the legislation came into place, and they've never really, I guess, addressed it to, and I think now it's kind of exploded a little bit more.
Okay, I have lots of hands going up here. Sandra, Glenn, and then Dave.
I guess the sad part is that they've done licensing. They've taken money for this license. They have nobody going out inspecting, but what would be the nice thing is having communication within the municipalities that they go into, if they could relate to us, because we're sending RCMP, which is costing the taxpayers money, you know, and the RCMP, from what I gather, because I have called on one location, that at the time they did not even know of what was going on. until they get that address again and again, that then that's how they found out about it, that they're not even relayed these locations. And I think that's where their communication part has lost in just keeping everybody in the loop. And again, going with the licensing and going with the zoning, like, there should be something that's,
That's your privacy act, you can't be telling them, you know, if I have something in my place.
but just think of residents that
No,
we get
no, I'm
phone
just
calls
saying,
now.
that's part of the other law about it, I mean, it's
Yeah.
human rights, you can't.
Okay, Glenn.
Agree 100%, like it's, you can have opiates in the house, doctor prescribed, we're not gonna tell anybody.
Yeah.
Because it's none of your business. This is way over and above us. As Deepak said earlier, this has been going on for years. This medical license has been around for a long time, and it's just been made so easy to get now. The other thing that shocked me was 80 plants. Now, define 80 plants. I've been reading something about this too. What's 80 plants? Is that a mature plant? Is that a 6-foot plant? Is that a 2-foot plant? Or anything in between? Like I was reading there about when you move your residence. If I sell my house and I have plants in it, if they're a certain size, I'm not allowed to transport them. But if they're under that size, it's not a problem. So is this 80 mature plants, or do they have another 80 plants like that?
Yeah, exactly.
I can tell you that they don't distinguish the type of plants, whether they're mature or not. They also allow you to grow plants outside. It hasn't occurred yet, but they do a certain amount, 25% from what I can understand, can be grown outside for what you're allowed to grow. What they can also do is you are allowed to keep a certain amount of dried cannabis on top of the plants. I estimated, now this is my estimation, is somewhere around 2 to 4 pounds of dried cannabis.
That's private. If you go in a commercial, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we toured the Delta 9 facility here, and you could fill this room with dry stuff. Not to mention a container after container after container after container of hydro. You know, just, that's commercials, they were in.
Councillor Sutherland.
Yeah, well, Glenn and Dave kind of touched on it, but just a comment, like, there's 4 people, let's say, in that residence. The requirements to get a medical license, or whatever you want to call it, I guess they're not, the requirements aren't very strict, are they? Because what's the chance of 4 people on medium? So they can grow 40 plants, right, 10 per person?
Your doctor needs to give you that note saying.
Well, they must not very
My
much.
eyes are dry.
Because you've got 4 people, all 4 people in that house have that
Yeah.
medical, it just seems kind of strange to me.
And apparently you can go under somebody else's permit too, as a helper or whatever.
Yes, that's where you could be serving it for one person.
Yeah, maybe not wild west, but loosey-goosey, it really is, I mean.
Like, the feds did not do this.
One last comment, number 27 says they did contact the Fire Commissioner Office and Health Canada, so it'd be nice to find out from the writer of this to see if they've heard anything, so.
Well, and going, looking at this, to me, in my mind, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Now, who should be answering them? Where he says in number 7, the ARM advises that they are unaware of this situation. Well, until it was brought forward, no, we weren't aware of it. So there are some questions here that I'm not sure if we're going to, try and provide some answers, like he's asking about the zoning. It really has nothing to do with the zoning if they have their license from the federal government. But I know that in the other one that we have, because we do have, that I know of, 3 in our municipality. The other one that I know of, the owner next door, again, went and tried to get a hold of whoever he possibly could. I know our bylaw enforcement officer has tried getting information from Health Canada, the RCMP, like you just can't get any information from anybody. So I would suggest that we all think about this, and I'm gonna ask our CAO to put something together, and perhaps we should be sending something off to FCM and also to AMM to see if we can, not that we're gonna disallow it, but we have to have something like, I know, you know, when you're walking down the street and you smell that, like, where is it coming from? You know, it's like Councillor Horga said, it's all loosey-goosey, you know, it's just, if you can get your doctor to sign off on it and you can get that medical marijuana and it's there. And yes, frustrating for the neighbors. Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
Well, I guess that's the challenge that I'm having. Like, I'm in support of us trying to do something through AMM, FCM. Because, you know, when we look at planning in general, right? So if a person wants to do something planning with a variation, well, at least the people get the say, right? The people who are directly offended or affected. Same with conditional use, right? Like if the whole idea of it, and the reason why it's set up, is to allow the people who are affected to at least have their say. In this case, doesn't seem like
Agreed. Just so it's clear, the zoning regulations and planning regulations do not override human rights. And these things can be seen as human rights as health-related issues. No different than if somebody was handicapped, you couldn't create legislation that disallowed them from putting a ramp to access their dwelling, as an example.
Well, but the neighbor would say, my rights are being infringed because I have to put up with this now. So there's both sides, right?
The sad thing about this whole thing is they legalized this now, okay? Debbie, the other day we were in Winnipeg, we went to that opening. I said to Deb, you smell something here? There's somebody in the back lane smoking it. I mean, it's all around now. And
But that's illegal.
well, it is, but I mean, it's legal to do it. It's illegal to do it in the back lane, but I mean, it just makes it easier now to get away with it. They're not gonna be charged now. You're not gonna have no criminal record now, right? So this thing is just, it's coming and it doesn't, it's gonna be next door to everybody soon, you know, if that's the way everybody's going, you know, especially the younger people. I mean, they,
Go ahead, Glenn.
There was a fellow that was approached by to see if he could have a commercial facility within our industrial park. He has them across Canada. He lives in BC, he was on a ferry, and at the time it was not yet legal, this was a few years ago, but he's got his commercial license. And it's in there someplace, but they went to court because he was smoking, and medical as well, in the smoking zone on the ferry. They tried to charge him to throw him in jail. He beat it.
Well, I think what's most
Human rights again.
I think what's most frustrating to me as an elected official sitting here, and I think it's the same with all of us, is when we get a phone call saying that, hey, what's going on next door? It looks like there's a marijuana grow-op or whatever you want to call it. And we got to say, well, geez, we can't do anything about it, or we know nothing about it. I think that we should at least have the information that, yes, there is one at this location, and it is licensed by the federal government, and you'll have to call them. You know, like I hate telling people that we don't know nothing about it or we can't do anything about it. We should at least be able to direct them to someone who could give them whatever little information they can.
And that's what I suspect that we possibly could get from FCM is a contact number.
Yeah.
So,
Well, but I know when the first one came up, even Tyler had a hard time getting somebody in the federal government at Health Canada to speak to about the first one that we had in our municipality that caused us some grief, so.
or if we could get some way for the feds to download this to us, that we could look after it, at least we get the revenue off of it. That's saying that we can't refuse somebody, but if, you know, if we gotta monitor this in an indirect way, which is happening now, we could at least get compensated for it.
Just for some clarification,
Go
I
ahead.
think Councillor Strang brought this up, and now that it's been brought up again, I don't think there's any licensing charges. This is a health-related issue. So you go to your doctor, and then you get the license to be able to do this. They're not, they give you a sort of a license that they authorize you to do this. And so when the police come and they knock on the door and they say, we think you're doing something illegal, they show the license. And at which point the police have nothing else to do other than leave.
I don't know if it's federal or provincial either.
It's a federal license.
It's federal.
Federal license. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've kind of talked about this one enough, but I do still have one question. There are a lot of unanswered or questions here that this gentleman or this couple have for us. Are we going to try and send something back to them, Deepak, or?
Yes, as Councillor Belanger has mentioned, I will send a reply to the citizen identifying that we've looked into this, this is what it is, and that it's a federal license given to these individuals, that, and that's as much as due to freedom of health information. We cannot achieve any other details on this, and neither can we share.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Go ahead, Glenn.
Do we know if they own this building? Like, it used to be ours at one time.
I know it used to be ours. I don't know who the owner of it is now.
Like, I know who the owner was, but I don't know if he's leasing it or.
I have no idea, but I know that there's been other things going on in that building that are not
So when they
at the
bought
top of the list
when they bought
either.
the building, did they buy the contents too, or?
Anyways, let's carry on. The next one we have is the Selkirk Generating Station, and this was briefly mentioned the other day. And I'm not sure if Deepak has spoken to Mr. Smolarski, but it appears as if our Selkirk Generating Station is going to be closing, and it will only be limited for 33 employees currently work there, and some will be deployed. It's still going to have some activity a couple of times a month, I guess. Deepak, was there anything else that you wanted to add to this one?
Other than Mr. Smolarski I apologize for my hatchet attempt at pronouncing the name, is willing to come and speak to council if council so wishes. And the only other item that I wanted to draw to your attention was that Manitoba Hydro owns the property Selkirk Generating Station sits on, and no decision has yet been made about the physical footprint of the plant and or the land it occupies. So there's a possibility that Hydro will be looking at reducing its footprint requirements on the land as they're keeping the building. And usually the request comes to the local municipality first as a right of refusal. That might be something that council may want to think about, especially because of its proximity to industrial lands.
Go ahead, Councillor Belanger.
Our CEO touched on the very same thing I wanted to mention, was that I hope we do get right of first refusal, that if they are going to sell off some of that land, I would imagine he would probably go for a reasonable price if they just want to. There are some prime locations there, especially you're going to Selkirk and taking that curve turning west. On your left-hand side, that high portion, that's fenced. It's a great area. I mean, Dave and I were looking at that for a recycling depot at one point. It's high, it's dry, so just nice to know that we would at least get the first nod.
Yeah. Okay, anything else on that one? Okay, Prairie Bylaw Enforcement, I guess they have another officer, and the normal is that we need to pass a resolution that they do have an additional officer. So if there are no questions, I will ask Deepak to please read the resolution.
Whereas an update to the list of the Prairie Bylaw officers dated July 28, 2020 has been provided by Prairie Bylaw Enforcement Limited, Therefore, be it resolved, the employee of Prairie Bylaw Enforcement Services listed below is an appointed designated officer and bylaw enforcement officer for the enforcement of the municipality's bylaws, the municipal act, and any other act the municipality is authorized to enforce. Number 177, Shannon Marsh.
Okay, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Strang, Councillor Horvath seconds. Before I call the question, I think the date in the resolution is wrong. It should be July 14th, not the 28th.
Correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I have a mover, I have a seconder. If there's no other discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, 6.4, 2020 auditor, and that is the appointment of an auditor for our 2020 to 2022 audits, and I will let Deepak speak to that one, please.
As you may recall, on the my report on May 12th, 2020, identified that there was that we were recommending to continue on utilizing the services of Exchange Group, who had been our auditor in the past, and the services were working well. This is a report bringing forward that authority to pass the resolution to authorize them to be our auditor for 2020. In 2019, they were given a proposal that they could continue for an additional 3 extensions by council. This would be one of those 3 extensions.
Okay, any questions on the auditor? I guess I have one. I know over the years we've changed auditors on occasion. Is it a good thing to change the auditor every so many years, and what would that time frame kind of be?
I think it's dependent. I've seen situations where auditors have been auditors for the organization for many, many years. Sometimes it's good to change them every 3 to 5 years. It's basically a decision of the corporation or municipality that's getting the audit services done as to their satisfaction with the services that they're being provided in a fashion, and looking at the kind of details that you're looking for. And sometimes you're looking for a change, mainly for a sake of looking at new eyes, that people have been looking at the same material over and over again. The other is, there is a time frame associated with that. So if council does wish to look at that for the future, we could submit do an investigation and submit a report to council looking at what are the advantages and disadvantages of going to an additional auditor. Some of the challenges of going to a new audit group always is also you have to go through a lot of additional work for them to get up to speed on these things. So the costs could increase for the first few years for them to look at all your books and all the detail. So there's some advantages of having an auditor that's been doing. As an example, in one of the boards I sit on a voluntary basis, we've had the same auditors for 10 years.
Okay, it was just a curiosity question, because I know before we go have the Exchange Group, the previous auditors we had for, oh gosh, I can't even remember how long, numerous years, and it got to the point where council, they decided that we should be changing it up a little bit, so. Okay, and I believe there is a resolution, and if you could bring that one forward, please, Deepak.
Certainly. And the resolution is, whereas Section 184(1) of the Municipal Act requires the municipality to appoint an auditor by August 31st of each year, therefore be it resolved, the extension of independent audit services provided by the firm of the Exchange Group be hereby accepted as presented, and the Exchange Group be appointed as a municipal auditor for the fiscal year 2020.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Spicer, Councillor Horvath seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Okay, 6.5, that's our portable washrooms that we've talked about on a few occasions over the last little while. And we do have some administrative comments there, and I'm just going to let Deepak go ahead with that one, please.
Council had requested us to take a look at certain changes and things, and I think at the last presentation on this item, I wanted to highlight an error that came in the report which had identified that we felt that there was $490 per unit per week was the quote that we thought. That was a total cost for all of them as opposed to per unit. So that was a mistake, and obviously, now with no surprise, there was quite a reaction around this table, so I wanted to fess up to that error immediately. On that, we did some work on this. We contacted several of the providers, and first we looked at the purchasing the toilets. So from our local provider that's been there, as well as we went to Alberta to take a look at the pricing. As you can see, the getting 6 purchase from our local provider is quite a bit more expensive than getting them directly out of Alberta, which would be purchased for the same amount. Now, in doing a proper comparison, we took a comparison of renting over purchasing. So on the purchasing, we would be looking at keeping them for the entire 12 months. So there's possibly ways of taking them away, but what we've been doing on the rent is that they come in, they place them a certain amount in the winter and then a certain amount in the summer. So that's our price right now, that's our current model. For the ones we have, we'd have to either find a place to store them or keep them on site. So for the sake of a comparison, we just said, well, let's look at just keeping them on the site. So that was 6 months for the summer and 6 months for the winter, 26 weeks each. We looked at a price for cleaning them, because as long as they're out there, they're going to be needed to be cleaned. We applied the same price of $490 per cleaning service per week for all of them, all 6 of them, and came back with a price that if we purchased, we'd be looking somewhere around $31,000 and a little over $31,000. In renting, we've gone in there, so there's a price. The first price is delivery and pickup, so twice, once in the summer, once in the winter, and so that's $713. The weekly rental is $150 per unit, with summer being 5 months of $3,750, and winter with 6 units as opposed to 5 units in the summer, and now it's $2,700, which, so the servicing and maintenance being similar price comparison of $1,560 for lesser weeks. Total estimated is comparison between the two. So purchasing is $31,000 and change, while renting is $23,500 and change. So based on that, we're recommending that we continue on with the rental program for now. The situation here is some additional points that I wanted to raise. If we do look at putting toilets in a location, right now when we're renting, we're putting them in 6 locations in the summer, we're taking them away, putting them to 5 locations. We've been able to switch around the locations depending on need and strategy. In the summer and the winter, or summer and winter as necessary. The big issue here is that if we put 6 of our own permanently anywhere, it'll be very difficult, is my recommendation, to then move them, because people get used to having them there all year round, and then now it's a question of why am I losing the service that I've gotten used to. So I wanted council to be aware of that as a possibility. Ways of around that, of course, is that we would do the same thing, move them, and as we're doing with the rental. But then we're looking at a cost of having staff to come and pick them up, and then having to store them, all those are additional requirements. We haven't even put in the costs of life cycle management of those toilets, determining on how long they would survive and what we would need to replace them. On a rental program, we're not doing any of that.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, well, I don't see a reason, you know, with the rental now, they're only there for certain months of the year. So if we were to have our own, it's not a big deal to move these, to put them back in our compound for the ones we don't need them. I don't think we would have to leave them there 12 months out of the year. We just do the same months as if they were rented. Because they're taken away then anyway, right? So it's really not, you can't really compare this because we're comparing it to cleaning them for 12 months out of the year, which we wouldn't be. Or we don't have to, we just the months that we need, like from the 5 months from May to September and the 3 months, January, February, March. So that's 8, as opposed to 2. So if we owned them, if we did own these, we don't have to clean them for that 4 months.
True.
We don't, and I understand Public Works would have to move them, but that's really not a big issue. You can move those
Move by hand.
and a half a day. Yeah, you just
Move by
move the
hand.
trailer. just put
So
it on.
that's 5 months at, 5 times 4 is $2,000, so that'd be $10,000 off of that?
So
You're
we'd
almost
be,
even.
we could look at $15,000 and $680, exactly the same as the rental, because we did separate that out, and Kate's council wanted to explore it that way, so they could be both the same as a 15,680 with 5,910 for purchase would take us to 20. So yes, then it could look reasonable. We could estimate the same amount for the delivery pickup as our own costs for moving them. You know, even then, that it comes into that it's fair and equal. It's council's decision if you want to go that way.
Is there any way, we had talked before about if you could negotiate, you thought maybe you might have a little bit of leverage here to negotiate with this guy to see if he could drop his price, or you haven't tried that yet?
We haven't tried that yet. As a matter of fact, you know, we had contacted several other providers with no response.
Yeah.
Councillor Boulanger, then Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Strang.
Very good report, good detail. It really explains it nicely. Councillor Sutherland has made us some good points though about we may not need them out as long, so the numbers really do start becoming more palatable.
Councillor Sutherland.
Just a question to Deepak. I think I know the answer, but so Schneider Septic did not contact you? Because I spoke with Marilyn. I didn't tell her anything. I just, you know, could you send us something in paper, what they're up in that area.
Right.
And she said she would. I'm very surprised that, you know, I didn't tell her what we were paying. I wanted to get a quote from her. I wish she would have gotten in touch with us.
I
Well,
think-
first she said she wouldn't, but then, because she said she didn't want to clean them, but then you.
Well, she said, I'll give you a quote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did you have any contact?
Colleen made multiple attempts at trying to get some, because we wanted to get this price on the cleaning to see if we could get it reduced, or someone else to do it. And we've had to rely on the Country Johns because that's the only place we have.
Yeah. Here's a weird thing. What about in the summertime, those people who cut the grass? If we could add this to their little list, they're just driving by, they do a quick little clean, and then they take off.
They
That's
need
a green
truck
team.
in there.
No, we get somebody to pump it out.
No, but they wash them. I don't like that. I don't know if you ever seen this.
Oh,
They-
they
they
pressure
wash
wash
it.
them. Oh,
I
I
see
see.
it.
Okay.
They sanitize the whole thing.
Well, and Sandra, I know you wanted to say something, but the other thing now with COVID the way it is, like I know that there's less and less public washrooms available, or you have to take your own supplies. Like I know at the Broken Head Wetland Trail, they've now closed their washrooms because there's nobody there to clean it after somebody uses it and things like that. You go to the campground at Grand Beach and they tell you to bring all your own stuff with you, and there's nothing in there.
All provincial.
Yeah, it's, that's right, so, you know, so it's,
Maybe this is an opportunity for us here this year to close those washrooms. Because we have to look at the liability side now too, if something happened there. So maybe we could get away with closing these washrooms till after this COVID thing blows over. Why are we taking risk if the provincial government isn't taking this risk? Shouldn't we follow, you know?
I think this was resident driven.
Oh, it
People
was,
were
but I
playing in
mean,
their backyards and behind the restaurants.
yeah, but I mean, you gotta look at the safety part of it too. No,
Well, and I guess
I'm not saying we couldn't go back to it later when this whole
Right.
thing goes away, but I mean,
well, I
it's
don't know.
real and it's here.
I don't know that it'll be going away anytime soon, so Councillor Strang, you did have your hand up, I'm sorry about
That's
that.
okay. Two things, I guess, here, just on what the numbers is, it says the estimated annual cost if we purchase. I don't think it would be an annual cost, because after we purchase the so many, like, you made a good point, Deepak, is the lifespan of them. What is, how long they do last for, right?
Annual cost will include cleaning. Include
Annual.
cleaning a month.
Oh,
That was the
okay.
annual cost, yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood that then.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Just another comment,
Sure.
so with that annual cost, we would have to set up some kind of a cleaning situation, we'd have to have a hot seat, we'd have to have a specific truck dedicated.
But that annual cost did include Country John's cleaning them for $4.90 a week. That's part of that.
Or if we own,
Even if we don't, yes.
I guess the other thing I'm surprised is that nobody else bid, or like was coming up to give a price, that if there was other local places around in the area too, so, which is sort of disappointing in one way, that we'd like to give more local business.
Well, that's right, I mean, and there's more than one company out in the beaches area that does that kind of work, so I'm kind of surprised that nobody else
Exactly.
I think part of this was for the analysis purposes. If council still wishes to explore this, there's nothing wrong with putting the RFP out, which people might respond to. I think some of the people don't want to respond with information that they are not sure how it'll be used
Well, and I
as
think,
well.
right, and I think the other thing we have to look at, and I guess I did kind of bring it up, and with COVID and, you know, the cleaning, you know, we all know that those germs can hang around for quite some time, and, you know, is this the right time to continue on with everything else that's going on in the world? And, you know, we're getting different spikes in certain areas, and I think we have to kind of look at that a little bit too.
Marilyn did say too that her husband was against this because he felt that the municipality shouldn't be paying for washrooms for somebody to use. Do you remember her saying that, Dave?
That's why he didn't,
Yeah, that's why he didn't feel that this was,
yeah.
yeah, I remember her saying that.
When I talked to her, I said, are you equipped to clean out these portable washrooms? Do you do it? Oh, yeah, we do it. And yeah, that was, well, yeah, her
She
husband.
rents them out to construction sites and highways.
Yeah, but they do clean them.
Yeah.
They have the
Yeah.
capacity.
Okay, so what is the wish, to just continue on the same route for now, or what would you like to do?
Question?
Go ahead, Councilor
Do we
Nawandjia.
currently have, we are currently renting washrooms out there right now, are we not?
We have 6 out there right now.
Okay, so a question came up, do we continue that? Like, one could easily say that, you know, council has looked at the washroom facilities we are providing, and due to the current situation, we don't feel that, you know, we want to be responsible for, you know, yes, they are cleaned by this company. That's a decision we have to make.
I know, and I guess, you know, I don't know the exact wording what the parks use, but I'm sure we could find that, and maybe it's a matter of, you know, if we chose to keep them open, we would have to put posters up
Yeah.
saying that
Enter.
you're on your own to
Yeah.
clean them, like, you know, if you're gonna use this facility, you have to, you know, wipe it down or whatever the case may be. I don't know what the provincial campgrounds are using.
Or use at your own risk.
Yeah, so,
But does that get you off the hook? I don't think that gets you off the hook even if something happened, does it, eh?
well, the thing is, you
It
can put a
doesn't.
poster up today and it'll be gone tonight, so
Yeah.
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Well, what's,
Go
I
ahead,
don't
Deepak.
think the municipality's putting itself at risk at this point because there's municipal structures out there where You know, we have the play structures and other things that do not use or use at your own risk. Individuals, I think there's some protection for the municipality right now, but does that stop anybody from suing you?
Probably not.
So what is the wish, continue on as we are?
Might as well.
I think so. I just think we should,
Go ahead, Dave.
for now, yes, we'll have to, and if we've got whatever our contract is with them, but we should still put out requests and tenders. As you said, what does it hurt? I think we should to try and, there's people up there in that area, like this Country John's is from, I guess, St. Andrews.
St. Andrews.
Yeah.
Well,
Go
another
ahead.
reason why we're paying so much, they're going up.
Yeah, they're charging us for mileage.
I'm sure that Schneider's would,
A couple of things here. You've already reached, I'm just making a comment, you've already reached out to Schneider's. They've already made a point of saying why one of them didn't like and want to give a quote. We would be hung out to dry if we didn't at least reach out to them and to those in the north. We did.
Yep.
They chose not to respond. In my view, I say leave it where it is. Nobody can say that we did not ask directly from a councillor.
And I think, if I remember, Deepak said that Colleen tried to reach out to some of the others in the area also
Correct.
with no,
Harris, I reached out to them too, I tried to get them to bid on it, and he wasn't interested in it.
Councillor Sutherland, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I mean, like, I'm glad you asked them, but if they had no interest, but only came up with negative reasons why they wouldn't, I would say that's leave sleeping dogs lie. That's just me.
it was one individual, yeah.
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 They do have the capacity to clean. That's why I approached her to see if, you know, because you,
Yeah,
I just, I'm sure they would have come in at a lot lower because they're up there.
But
The
they
whole
didn't.
idea was to provide the service, but for as little as cost to us as possible, because it seems pretty high.
right,
We're still nowhere though, because we had made suggestions before that we could get subsidized somehow for this $20,000 or $30,000 it costs us a year. We haven't approached any of the businesses yet, we haven't approached the casino. We're providing a service for everybody else, and as a taxpayer, but now I can see why Schneider's saying that. Why are we doing this for these businesses here? I mean, how many people in this room go out and fish or do whatever? What's the benefit?
Well, I have an answer for that. I'm not sure if I want to keep going on with this, but
yeah, I think you're,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't know
if you want to make your comment, and I think then we'll just close it off, because Deepak does want to say something.
my answer would be, it's very easy for someone on the outside to question council as to why we do what we do, but when you're sitting in this circle and you have ratepayers coming to us asking for assistance, or would you think of providing something like this? I mean, we're talking about tourism, we're talking about the number of people that use the area fishing, both American, both tourists, picnickers. The municipality does what we feel is right, and the choice and decision we made was to provide the toilets as a municipal service because we want to promote tourism. I get what he's saying, but it's very easy to say, wow, they shouldn't pay for those, it's taxpayers' money, but we're sitting here and it's a decision we made as a group. So I guess that's my kind of answer to him, or to the person who said it.
Okay, Deepak, you had something that you wanted to share.
Just for some correction purposes, Colleen can confirm that as of today, nobody else has submitted an estimate. Went out to 12 local businesses that have business license. The poster on each washroom, that is cleaned once a week. So they put the poster back up on the bathroom once it's cleaned once a week. I also need to clarify, that I had to clarify, the recommendation said, based on the costing, because we're looking at purchase or rental, based on the costing, the administration recommends we keep renting the portable toilets. And if council is okay, council agrees with this, our request can still go up for quotations for the registered businesses to provide all or some of the rentals. So we could still go out to do this, because there is, Colleen and I felt that there might be people not willing to share their pricing that could be made public, so that they wouldn't want to compete, lose their competitive edge. And so this might allow us to do that. It doesn't take much for us to do an RFP, but it's the will is of council. As as so rightfully said by Councilor Boulanger.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Councilor Boulanger.
Councilor Horvis raised a good point, and we talked about it before, and we all know that it doesn't hurt to ask a question. But when a question isn't asked, we don't know the answer. I truly believe that either, I don't know if it's in the realm of councilor to do or administration, but I can bet you dollars to donuts, and I don't know about now because the casinos are closed and they're not making
They're open.
they're open.
Yeah.
So all I want to know is a simple phone call. I forget the fella's name there. You might know him, Debbie. We've worked with him before. He's very generous. If a question went to them to say, hey, we're providing X amount of toilets for locations along Lake Winnipeg that's helping with the industry where fishermen are coming, they're using your hotel. Would you be interested in putting a sticker on the door saying one of these toilets is sponsored by casino? It's a simple ask.
Right,
It's either going to be yes or it's going to be no. We're not looking for $10,000. We're
right.
looking for a small amount of things, and I think it would go a long way.
$4.90 a month.
Okay, so I think our CAO has made a note of that, and I'm sure he will contact the casino, and I'll have to, I think I know the gentleman's name, and I'll just share
It's a
that.
funny,
out.
it's a different kind of name.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
not only the casino, but those other businesses.
The businesses and some of
Yeah.
the businesses in Grand Marais.
And
Waivers,
standard
waivers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put something together. I'll sit down with Deepak and try and find, or figure out some of the businesses and things like that. So, okay, so we're gonna continue on the way we are for the time being. And Deepak will do some research on trying to have some, I guess, sponsorship to some of those, and we'll leave it at that for now.
Because that 20, wasn't it $8,000 at one time? Now it's up to 20. I remember $8,000.
Is that for the
For the
additional ones?
toilets and all that. Now it's way up there, it's like, or 30.
But I thought that was that not maybe for just a portion of the
I
year?
can't remember. I'm
That was for
sorry.
the portion of the
Yeah, I
year.
think,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I remember seeing
The
$8,000.
price of paperwork.
Okay, so we're at 6.6, policy 515, solid waste management, and I believe that Deepak has got something to say on this one also.
Yes. We were contacted by a resident saying that they were told that there is no longer a charge for tires being received at our landfills and our transfer stations. Mainly because what happens is our tires are received and Reliable Tire takes them from us. And what we had was a fee of $5. So tires by themselves were received for free because we weren't charged, so it was just a pass-through. And they were charging us in the past $5 if they were on rims. And this is tractor tires or truck tires or car tires. It didn't matter what rim. Since then, a change has occurred with Reliable Tire, who are coming to take the tires from us, who say they don't charge for that anymore. That they don't charge the $5, so we felt, since this was a pass-through cost, that it was best to come back to council to waive the policy of collecting the $5 per charge.
And only one person came and said that? How did they find out that we weren't getting charged anymore?
They found out from Reliable Tire. Somebody contacted Reliable Tire, I guess, and said they don't charge anymore. And so then we investigated, and Debbie, our Public Works support person, contacted them and discovered that it wasn't. So what we've done is took a look at the policy, which is our current policy 515, which states tires without rims are free, but there is a $5 charge for tires with rims. And the only reason of that was because we were being charged. So now what we're recommending is a fee schedule for the landfill. The transfers should be changed to reflect both tires with and without rims will be accepted at no charge affected upon passing the resolution to council. So this person doesn't want to pay for the tires, and I said, well, normally this would be a minor issue I would have approved, but we have a specific policy at council, so I have to come back here.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? If we're not being charged, we're gonna change that policy, and I think there is a resolution to change the policy there.
Resolved, council adopt policy number 515, solid waste management, and that said policy be incorporated into policy manual.
Okay, can I have a mover? Councillor Spicer, Councillor Strang, seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Okay, the next one, 6.7, hunting on floodway lands. And I know that Deepak has done some research on this one, so I'm just gonna let him share with us what he's found.
Okay, Evan Graham, the acting senior flood protection planning officer from the province of Manitoba, received a complaint from one of our residents about people using ATVs and hunting on the floodway lands, especially and the response that came back was that that he doesn't feel that it's an issue for the provincial government, and that federally or provincially they're not allowed to have ATVs, so that's just a direct fine and could be enforced. In the case of hunting, that's something that a municipality can pass, saying that there's no hunting on their grounds, and as a bylaw, and the province has committed to following and committing to all bylaws out there, which would mean that we would now then not only put the bylaw forward, and we could then enforce it. That being said, we took a look at it and said, okay, what's happening in our partner municipalities in the who are sharing these lands that are associated with the floodway. And there are basically three of our municipalities here, which is Springfield, East St. Paul, and us. And we talked with East St. Paul and also went to the Springfields. I don't think we've had an answer yet from Springfield, but East St. Paul restricts all hunting throughout the entire municipality. That being said, it's a much different type of a municipality, and Springfield is much closer. Understanding that this is a very large RM, would that be logical to really restrict similar to the East St. Paul? Or would it make sense to take a look at this in light of that these are lands that are also becoming our walkways? We're also promoting active transportation, and we're linking our walkways through the floodway. The floodway is becoming biking, and so in order to avoid certain amounts of conflicts that can occur between residents that are walking and residents that are hunting, felt that if council so wished, they could pass a policy stating no hunting on the floodway lands that are as part of the floodway, and only restricting in that particular area. Some logic to that is that, generally speaking, if you're going to hunt on the floodway lands, you wouldn't be normally putting a rifle on your back and walking up and down the floodway. You would most likely be on some sort of a vehicle.
Rifles are illegal stored vehicles.
Okay,
Oh, this would be with bows?
Hmm?
This would be with bows, I'm thinking?
No, shotguns.
Shotguns?
It's
Okay,
different.
so with shotguns, either way, if you're walking, you need to get it on ATV. So there are, what we felt was there was an opportunity to take a look at it. We've given you an option of being able to,
comments. Okay, Councillor Boulanger has had his hand up, so it'll be Councillor Boulanger, Councillor Vasilevich.
Our CEO has made the same recommendation that I would have made, exactly the same. Some history here, if you look at in the early 80s or late 80s, mid 90s, this chamber was full past the door. Madam Chair would remember, she worked here at the time. In fact, they could have filled the hall twice over. The RM had tried putting a hunting or firearm restriction in St. Clements, and it did not go well. My recommendation is the same as our CAO, is that if we're going to add a bylaw, it is specific to the floodway. If you look at East St. Paul's bylaw, it's very restrictive and it's restricting hunting and everything everywhere. We don't want that. It has to be specific for the floodway. When I was in uniform, I fielded hundreds of calls every fall from people concerned of people moose and duck hunting in the floodway. There's nothing we could do provincially because it's legal. The municipality is the one who needs to create a bylaw, as Mr. Administrator said. So A, create a bylaw, restrict hunting in the floodway only, spell it out in the bylaw of the area that you're talking about, latitude, longitude, however you want to do it, but it's the floodway, and that would solve all of our problems, because then Tyler can simply go down there and remove people from hunting, and once the word gets out there to the general public, it would be a lot easier to deal with.
Okay, thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Bazarowicz.
Well, two things. This complaint is pretty much driven, I think, by the same person every year. It's not a widespread complaint. The other thing is right now, the Army Springfield is going through their hunting bylaw, shooting bylaw. And what they have done was, they're trying to limit a buffer zone around settlements, say Oak Bank, Enola, whatever, but nothing was ever mentioned.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
Question for Mr. Boulanger. So it's provincial land,
It's Crown land.
Crown land, so if you're a treaty, can you still hunt there even
Yes.
if we pass the bylaw?
That's an interesting point. Municipal bylaws, especially when it's dealing with a safety concern or safety issue, it actually supersedes the First Nations rights. As soon as you have something that's safety related because of mixed use, like hikers, people in the floodway using it as recreation, that's where it turns the point of now treaty rights do not supersede safety.
So then there would be no hunting there at all?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you were Métis or treaty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Spicer.
I'm not adverse to the concept that's being presented here. There's two challenges I think we have. The first one is enforcement. If you're not going to enforce a bylaw, don't put it in. So we have to visualize someone hunting in the floodway and having our bylaw enforcement officer trying to catch them.
Correct.
Okay, so that's one thing that's going to be a challenge.
And it costs huge.
The second thing is from previous experience, the province of Manitoba has a different interpretation of municipal bylaw enforcement on crown lands than some municipal lawyers in this province. So you may want to check into that.
Councillor Sutherland, then Councillor Strang.
Yeah, question, I mean, Rob could, if we passed a bylaw, no hunting in the floodway, as you mentioned before, you could go there and, if they had their license and everything was in order, you couldn't do anything. If we passed this bylaw, our bylaw officer wouldn't have to do it. Conservation.
No.
Can't, if the bylaw's passed, conservation
No.
still?
We don't. St. Andrews is one of the few municipalities in the province that has had a center fire restriction on firearms, high-powered rifles since the mid-'80s, I remember, because I worked in and around the area. As conservation officers, when we went out during hunting season, in that particular area, we wouldn't even check hunters because Curly Gagnon, the bylaw officer at the time, was enforcing it. So it's not conservation's law, it's a municipal bylaw, so their bylaw officer had to enforce it. We had no rights to enforce their laws, so we couldn't, as conservation officers, we couldn't enforce St. Clemence's bylaws.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
that answers my question.
You couldn't even act on it?
No. We'd go there, we'd find a complainant, then I'd call Curly would be there in 10 minutes. That was it, that's all I could do.
Okay, so what are we going to do with this one? Are we going to give direction to draft a bylaw for a specific area of no hunting on the floodway from Lockport to the municipal boundary? Or are we going to leave well enough alone, or what is the direction? Councillor Belanger?
I would suggest doing one of two things. Councillor Spicer made a good comment, and that is a worthy phone call to make to conservation or to Crown's Land. Tell them what we're considering doing, that the RMS St. Clements is looking at creating a bylaw to curtail hunting within the floodway boundaries, and we're wondering if there's any problems or hoops we have to go through because it's Crown land. There is a difference, and Councillor Spicer brought that up. There could be,
They may not let us.
they may have suggestions, but, yeah.
Okay, so is that?
Sandra have something? Weren't you after Dave? Didn't you want to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandra, I didn't see your, you gotta go like this sometimes. Go ahead,
That's
Sandra.
okay. I was just gonna ask, they made a point also here about ATVs. So when that's brought up, who is the resident calling? Are they calling the RCMP or are they calling our bylaw?
For ATVs
Yes.
specific?
We have a bylaw for that.
Yeah, we do.
So, because then the RCMP tell the resident it's not their jurisdiction, they can't go, but yet we're sending our bylaw there, and what's our bylaw, like,
Not
we
unless-
can't find, we have nothing to, it's almost, it's the vicious.
It's
There is,
Yeah,
go ahead,
off-road
Deepak.
vehicles are part of the off-road vehicle act, and they're prohibited on the floodway. So RCMP are able to enforce the act. Realistically, it should be calling RCMP when somebody's riding on an ATV.
And I have had
And
them.
realistically, if it was, the best option would be for the province to pass an act on the floodway lands.
Right.
Because if it's an act, then the RCMP can act on it, as well as all the other jurisdictions, because there is a concern, that our unarmed officers are going to talk to somebody walking around with a gun.
Okay, Glenn and then Scott.
And Deepak just said something that I was gonna bring up. Number one, yeah, unarmed. The cost, again, we're not equipped, we have to get a high-end ATV if you wanted to chase somebody down.
Can't chase them.
And a snowmobile, which we don't have. Like, you look at your costs here, and then you're taking your bylaw officer away from his daily routine. And if you start doing it here, what's the next area they're gonna hit? Like, I have a conservation officer that lives, I don't know if it's past your place or between our places, who routinely shoots in his backyard geese. And it's all legal. And there's been a few grumbles from the neighbors, like, how can you do that? Well, it is legal.
Well, see, and to me, that's the difference. You're saying he's shooting in his backyard.
Yeah.
He's not on the floodway. And if we're
Oh, yeah.
restricting it, if we choose to go that route, it's going to be on the floodway, not on the
That's what I say,
lands.
where's the next place gonna be? Dunn's Creek they're hunting on too. And then they were shooting coyotes, and I was with the conservation officer there, and he was adhering to our laws, bylaws. He was using 22 long, not long,
Okay?
mag, 22 mag, because it's still rimfire. Center fire is not allowed.
Scott, I believe you had your hand up.
I think it's been a good discussion. I think, my suggestion would be is that we have administration talk to Crown Lands, maybe check with our lawyer, as well as with our bylaw enforcement and see, come back with a report of, what's this gonna take? Because if we're going to go ahead, once again, my suggestion would be is, if we're gonna put a bylaw together, we've got to enforce it. So, what's that gonna take? Like, is it going to be, maybe not an ATV because we're not supposed to be using an ATV, like are we gonna have them out there riding on a bicycle? Are we, like, what are we,
Unarmed.
you know, like it's, like I don't disagree with the concept, but we have to be able to do what we're trying to accomplish.
I'll be
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
When a bylaw officer would go down to the floodway acting on a complaint, in how I'm envisioning it, would be him simply perhaps approach the individual and say, you may or may not be aware, but there's a gun bylaw within St. Clements prohibiting hunting here. I would ask you to just, if you mind, to just pack up and leave. It's at that point when he's gonna find out whether it's gonna be compliant or not compliant. If it's not compliant, then he turns around and walks away and calls the RCP and looks for assistance of some sort. 99.9% of the time, people will go, geez, I didn't know, and pack up and leave. With the ATV thing, again, it's hit and miss. You cannot catch these people. I've tried, we've tried. We've put roadblocks up, we've put stings out there. All you can do as a bylaw is go out there and act on a complaint, and at least you can call the complainant and say, I did go to the floodway, I went to the location you said, I could not see here or, find the ATV. That somewhat appeases the caller.
Right.
So I know what Scott is saying, we create a bylaw, we gotta be able to enforce it. That is enforcing it, that's going out there, that's showing yourself, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, and Deepak brought up a good point too, like if we're going to use this area for recreation, then we gotta take a serious look at this, for safety reasons.
And a lot of people are using the floodway as walking trails now, so.
Yeah, it's a safe thing to do, I agree with it. There shouldn't be shooting guns over there with people and all the bikes and that.
And I feel most hunters are law-abiding.
Yeah.
And if you put the signs up appropriately, most do follow that.
They'll have something to shoot at, at least for some.
Okay, I think we've given our administration enough information to bring some information back to us, do some research and bring something back to us. So if we could, let's move on to 6.8, and that is the Narrow and East Beaches Fire Departments, and that is their breathing apparatuses. And go ahead, Deepak.
Yes, Madam Mayor, as you know, the Narrow and East Departments, each of the fire departments had requested this. This was put into the budget. The budget was $50,000 for each of those pieces of equipment. Quote was received on each, for 4 units on each unit. And what we're recommending is to proceed with the purchase of this equipment that was already budgeted, which will be under what was originally budgeted. So we have, because each one requires specialized equipment to connect to their existing systems, what we have is a separate resolution for the East Beaches Fire Rescue and a separate resolution for the Narrow Fire Department.
Okay, if there's no questions, I'm going to ask Deepak to read the East Beaches one. I believe that's the first one.
Just one comment.
Go ahead.
I mentioned this to Deepak earlier, that I asked him when I was looking over all this stuff, if they just went to the supplier that they've been dealing with all the time, or did they ask for 3 quotes and get pricing, so.
And I will be checking on that, Councillor, and
I
then
think
getting back
that's
to
something
you
you have
and
to
all of
look-
Council.
Yeah, that we should be doing from now on. We talked about it before, and it's not been happening in the past, and I would just like to make sure that it's starting to get done.
To the best of my knowledge, it happens all the time,
Yeah.
every purchase. Because they were told prior to DPAC coming that we must get 3 quotes, and one or more, and one must be DPAC.
Okay.
Yeah, through Winnipeg Metro, or through John Q, actually. So, okay, Deepak, if you want to read the first resolution for Narrow.
Whereas the East Beaches Fire Department identified the need for 4 self-contained breathing apparatus, and whereas capital expenditure for the purchase of the SBA are approved at the adoption of the 2020 financial plan, therefore be it resolved, Council authorized the CAO to purchase 4 MSA G1 SCBA as per ABC Fire and Safety quotation dated July 17, 2020 in the amount of $46,787.41.
Okay. Can I have a mover? Counselor Bazarowicz, Counselor Horbis seconds. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Counselor Spicer.
So just for clarity, between the two quotes, and I know we're only dealing with one, but this question deals with. So it looks like we're buying the same type. And my question is I hope we are for interchangeability, for
That's-
mutual aid purposes.
This is the last
Glenn,
item. Sorry.
If the administrator could please answer that? Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor Spicer.
As stated, yes, they are similar equipments. As part of what you need to know is when the original quotes were put onto the agenda, it was an older quote and they looked like they were different because the unit prices were different, but they're exact same unit prices. They are the exact same equipment. I did check on that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor Bazarowicz.
And I take it that this one here will be 50% of our cost. Shared with Alexander?
Yes, for the speeches, correct.
Okay, I have a mover, I have a seconder. And we did the East Beaches one. So if there are no further questions, I will call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. And the second one we have is for the Narrow Fire Department. And go ahead, Deepak, please.
Whereas the Narrow Fire Department identified the need for 4 self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA, and whereas capital expenditures for the purchase of the SCBA were approved at the adoption of the 2020 financial plan, therefore be it resolved, Council authorizes the CAO to purchase the 4 MSA G1 SBA as per ABC Fire and Safety quotation dated July 17, 2020 in the amount of $46,000.
Can I have a mover,
600.
please? Counselor Spicer, Counselor Belanger seconds. Any further discussion?
Question?
Go ahead.
This equipment was allocated during budget. It's not so much the purchase of it that we're voting on, is it more so just because of the cost, or because to make sure that we have the best cost, or?
Because of the cost.
Okay.
As it comes forward, there's only so much authority under the CAO, and then it comes back to council on these types of situations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have a mover, have a seconder. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Now, this was one of our additions from this morning, or earlier this afternoon, I should say, 6.9, grass cutting on the walking trail along the hydrolands. And Deepak, if you could, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received a letter from the Manitoba Wheat Board, the Wheat Board, who normally does the grass cutting for the hydro lands, which is the lands that are alongside the trail. Their service contract with Hydro has expired, and they're waiting for the award of that contract, which is for another 2 to 3 weeks. We've been receiving, and they've been receiving complaints of unsightly, and the grass cutting has not occurred. What there's a suggestion here is that this is no similar to requirements of weed management that we would apply to any landowner in the municipality, such as Hydro. And if we were to, let's say someone didn't have or had large tall grass, we would normally go to the Wheat Board to go and cut the grass for us and put it on their taxes. So the possibility is that we can contact Hydro and let them know that this is an unsightly situation, that they need to deal with this immediately. And if not resolved, we can have it cut and then charge it back to hydro by the same person that they're most likely going to hire to cut the grass for them.
Right, go ahead, Councillor Boulanger.
Just a question to see if Linda was, if Linda's going to be returned, I guess she will, I'm sure someone will reply to her that this is what action's been taken. The lady who sent it forward. Great.
Her last name is, we're being recorded, so it's a resident that uses the trail quite a bit.
Oh,
I guess my question though is she not only talks about the trail, but or the grass, but she's also talking about all the, what I think are all burrs along the south side of the trail, along the ash pit. Like if you drive to Selkirk, you can see
Yeah.
that it's getting right close to the trail, and I'm wondering if she's not talking about that also.
Her specific complaint was more to the east of the plant, right where you connect to that gravel road that cuts across by Searle.
Right, right. Yeah, well, she says the worst part of the trail is behind the bush line along the main highway 204. So that's that stretch between, that would be in behind Spruce Road, Spruce
Yeah.
Drive. Okay, so, go ahead, Councillor Sutherland.
Well, it's just bringing up with Rob after. It's just, it's pertaining, we're talking about the walking trail.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask Rob if it's okay, or I can ask him later.
Has to be there.
Question?
Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
This is a process question. So if we receive a complaint about a property being unsightly, is it the RM that sends the letter to clean it up, or is it the weed board that sends the letter to clean it up?
The bylaw officer usually sends a letter to the individual saying they need to deal with it unsightly. There's usually, the process is that our staff member would go and, our representative would go and talk to the property owner and say, can you resolve this?
And
They
then
are unable
after the second inspection, if it's not done, he contacts the weed board to go
Correct.
and mow.
Go ahead, Councillor Bazarovich.
Councillor Sutherland can verify this too. We both sat on the weed board, I think it's still there. But the weed board does not cut grass, to my knowledge. They only deal with noxious weeds. People have complained to the weed board, like I think this isn't accurate here, that they're saying that you can be unsightly if you have grass. The weed board went in before, a yard full of dandelions, they said, it's not a problem. A yard full of thistle, not a problem. Purple loosestrife is a problem. Red Pistia is a problem. Other weeds, they're not noxious, there's nothing you can do about it. Not that I don't want to help this, but just let you know what the power of the weed board is.
Councillor Gazrovich is right, the weed board used to just do weeds and noxious stuff, but the planning, or the weed board has taken on the contract with Hydro because it was it paid well, and it helped pay the bills. So over the last number of years, perhaps after you left, the weed board is now contracting themselves out to Hydro, which cuts all the lowland. You know, when you go to Selkirk, there's lowland, they cut all that. Is that correct, Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, I remember reporting revenue, like,
Yeah.
they have been contracted through Hydro for quite some time,
Yeah.
yes. It's not because of the weeds,
It's-
they're contracted
yeah.
to keep the,
Yeah.
Okay,
that's true.
so I think we've solved that one.
So we'll follow process and we'll contact Manitoba Hydro, say, please correct this as per our bylaws.
Perfect. Okay, we're down to number 7 on our agendas, and that's the accounts and the financial statements. So the first one we have is our closed list of accounts. And Deepak, if you could give us the resolution, please.
Resolved, council approved the July 28, 2020 list of accounts, check numbers 2021336 to 202017773 in the amount of $1,656,288 $916.81 for payment.
Okay, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Sutherland, second. Second.
Nobody wants.
Councillor Boulanger. Questions, comments, queries? And I don't know how closely everybody looked at it, but I'm sure that most of you who did look at it noticed that there was a fair amount of checks for the fire departments. They get paid twice a year, and one of them happens to be at the end of June, so their checks are all in here this time too, so.
Chavos and.
Yeah, there was quite a big check for our gravel for this year, so,
And us.
and dust control, yes. If there's no other comments or questions, I have a mover, I have a seconder. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Okay, we have our financial statement as of June the 30th. Can I have the resolution, please? And this is the short version of the statement.
Resolve the financial statement dated June 30th, 2020 be accepted as presented.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Horbis, Councillor Strang seconds. Any further discussions, questions, queries? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. I did speak briefly to Deepak, and I said it was kind of one of those things where I'll have to sit down with Deepak, because when I got the more detailed statement, there was a few areas there that seemed really out of whack, so I will sit down with Deepak probably later this week or early next week, so if there is anything to report, it'll be next time, and it may correct itself on the next statement, so. Now we go to our grants. We have a few grants that we have to approve here today. The first one is the South St. Clements Cotton Program. And there are some administrative comments. Is there anything that you wanted to add, Deepak?
Nothing specific on this one. This is an annual grant, and they're requesting for the same amount, and it's being recommended that council approve it.
Okay, I guess I had a bit of a hard time reading their submission because it was sideways and I couldn't get it turned around on my machine. Thank you. I guess my question is, are they still doing any patrolling with COVID and everything else that's going on in the world? Did they give any indication in their report if they're still patrolling? And
They gave some indications they weren't doing any kind of serious.
They weren't.
Go ahead, Councillor Strang.
I have no problem giving the money, but I have a bit of a problem why they're doing they're requesting if they already have 4,000, like they have money in the bank to purchase gas cards. And the other thing is, I guess that they haven't had any invoices since September of last year, which is almost going to be a year. So I just sort of had a few different comments on that, or points that.
Good points, yeah.
But it's an inexpensive grant to get what we get out of it, but in other words, if they're not doing any process or any, if nobody's going on.
Stockpiling money there.
That was the thing that after you saw what the amount is, but that's just a couple points that I sort of made reading it, but.
Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
Well, just further to Councillor Strang's comments, you know, I guess some of the expenses too that they've got here likely are not gonna happen this year, like having meetings, for example. Costs for meetings, maybe not even a Christmas party this year. You know, like their gas coupons are $2,200, it says. So,
Well, I guess looking at this 2019, so does that mean from November 1st till now, they haven't done anything? Like, that's kind of where I'm looking at it, like.
Is that what they said, Deepak? They haven't, they're not doing?
Well,
They're doing some, but not to any great extent because of COVID, and there's been limitations because of 2 people required, and sometimes you can only have 1, until they're family members, or what do they call them, within the same bubble.
So do we cut this in half, or what do we do here?
Well, that would be the will of council. We've asked for 3,000, if we so choose to give them half, or, 1,000 or 2,000, that's entirely up to us sitting around the table. Go ahead, Councillor Strang.
Another thing is that we could still say that we will, like, as they start up again after COVID, that we'll give the money back, like, because otherwise they're just it's gonna get stockpiled. I don't know, I'm just,
Right.
but I have nothing, I'm for giving the money, but, that I see that they do have money in the account.
Yeah, good point, like what,
Okay, so what is the wish?
Half.
Half?
I'm okay with that.
And I think if we give them half, I think it should be put in a letter to them that, once they start patrolling more and so on, that we would reconsider giving them the other half.
If they need it.
If it's required, yeah.
Not to say we're gonna give it to you, because then they'll just say, well,
For sure they will.
Yeah.
6 months later, okay, give us the money now. So we might as well give them the whole thing now.
I would say that we can put in there that say we haven't seen any invoices since a certain date, and since with COVID on right now, that we'll give you this amount for this year.
Well, could we mention that they have $4,000 in their account too? Can we mention that?
$3,218.17, yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll pass the resolution for the 1,500, which is half, and I think we are all agreeable to that, and I'm sure that our CAO will draft a reasonable response and explain the situation to the lady that looks after the COPS program.
Good.
Okay, can we have the resolution, please, Deepak?
Certainly. Give me 1 second. Kind of lost track of my.
Want me to go for it?
Yeah, he's there.
No, I've got it right there.
Yeah.
Resolved, council approve the 2020 requested grant to South St. Clements COPPs in the amount of $1,500.
Moved by Councillor Strang, seconded by Councillor Sutherland. I'm just asking if we could take the word requested, because that's not what they requested.
Sure.
Okay, I have a mover, I have a seconder. I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Okay, the second one we have is the Gordon Howard Center.
Again, something that happens on a yearly basis. Last year, they requested 4,000, received it this year. They budgeted 4,000 as well, and identified that the board of directors are in need of the funds, and we're recommending approval.
Okay, and they've sent a pretty good membership or financial statement. So are we good with the amount that they requested?
How long have they been open?
Are they open?
I think they are, but I don't know how much they're doing, so.
I think they'll start doing more now that there's been, we're at phase 4. They've been providing these kinds of services for various citizens.
Yeah,
throughout
probably
this
more
country.
now, but then there's all older people there, like if I was, well, I am, I guess. So, if I was, I would.
If you wanted to
You look
go
very
there.
young to me,
Yeah,
Councillor.
it's not a good place.
What do you think of the motion now?
Well, and I think their space is big enough, if I remember correctly, in their banquet area, they could probably accommodate at least the 50 people. available. So, I mean, I'm sure that some of their programs are starting up again, so are we good with the 4,000 or do we want to
Yeah.
give them a little? Yeah, okay, so can I have the resolution, please?
Resolved, council approve the 2020 requested grant to Gordon Howard Center in the amount of $4,000.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Vazarovic, second, Councillor Sutherland. Any further comment? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Well, your buddies over there.
Opposed? And that is
Thank
carried.
you.
The next one we have is the Dull Lake Ratepayers Association, and I believe that is some funds to go toward their picnic shelter.
Correct. This is, with some discussions, working with Colleen, they provided the details associated that are required for the permitting, parking, building of the shelter, and all those details they've been able to provide. And it's come back that the total project cost is $30,000 for the structure, $59,50 for the prep, materials, and landscaping. Total project cost of $35,950. And the policy indicates no project shall exceed $8,000, will receive more than $8,000. And so the request that they've asked is for $5,950. This is an overall request for all this, and just so the council knows, you can also add in the comment that I think one of the councillors wanted to donate some material. Now would be the time to do that if you wanted.
Okay, that is all good. I'm just wondering where the supporting material is from the Dull Lake Ratepayers Association, because there's nothing here.
It's not available as part of the administrative report that Colleen does have. If council would like to see that afterwards, that's pretty sure.
Well, I think that, like, I mean, the one before for Gordon Howard Seniors, we had all that background information. This one, we don't have it, and I don't have a problem giving them the grant because we did tell them that we would support them in their endeavor to build their picnic shelter. But I guess my thing more is that we should have the same information for all the grants. Like, if we get the background for one, we should have it for all of them, so. Okay, if you want to move the resolution, we'll move it forward.
So do I add that now, Deepak, or I just phone them and tell them about that limestone? Because we have that limestone in our yard, and I said that we would get that.
Can we take our amount down then?
Well, they asked for it, well, we could have given them 8.
Well,
It's only a load of limestone,
Yeah.
I mean, what's that worth? It's not worth.
yeah, but I think that if it's a personal donation from yourself as a business person in the community, that's something totally separate from what we're doing.
Yeah,
as
that's
council.
fine.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
So what's the value of the loan of limestone?
$8,000.
Delivered to your location.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I had one question though. With the total that we have here, materials and work in kind, I guess I was questioning the materials and like you said, just the other information behind here would have been good to have.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because I don't know, like, I know we even said that if they needed some in-kind work from the municipality, that we would look at it. But I don't know what's in that background info.
I did, asking you shall receive, we've just received that information, if you'd like me to,
Yeah, if you could just put it up on the screen and we could at least have a look at it.
sure. First is the picnic shelter itself, that's the design and the look that'll be put in as a location, as a requirement. This is the letter that was received for the post foundations, dry pack, 6x6 pressure treated woods, continuous pre-engineered LVL heaters, headers notched into the posts and so forth. This is the kind of information they've had to provide to Red River Planning,
Right.
identifying the building is a 36 by 40 by 10, erected price, as well as if it was a larger building, the 2 different prices. So the options were identified as part of this entire document.
Are they going with the concrete floor, or did they?
No, gravel, I think.
Gravel. I think it was on the first page. That limestone. Where did I see it?
Be a lot more if it was a concrete.
Dry pack Redicrete? Is
Yeah,
that,
Yeah,
rebar in there too.
yeah,
so that is
It's
concrete?
for the post foundations.
Yeah, that's the
That's
power
for the
post and
Yeah, that's for the posts.
Oh, okay.
You pour ready cream in there.
Right, okay.
yeah, there's nothing in the quote for in the floor.
So there's this document. Well, let me just get that. This was the request for it. The first page, second page. Identifying picnic shelter, Olympic Builders will supply the material and erect a building. Giovanni has obtained the giant or grant from the province of Manitoba, blah, 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 sorry. Blah, 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 and, sorry
We
about that.
understood you though.
We got it.
I just didn't want to read for you, just in case this part
But
of the
they got,
recording.
I believe that their provincial grant was $15,000.
Yes, they received $15,000 from the province, and they are putting $15,000 in themselves.
Right.
Will provide, and are requesting $5,900, which is the last one. Let me bring that page up.
Yeah,
Good for them, at least they're not asking for the whole weight.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the cost of the building, a school contractor has provided an estimate of $3,450 for the floor and $2,500 for the parking lot. So that's what they're requesting, because they have to, as part of the permitting requirements, they have to provide parking.
Right.
Yeah, it's 3450, it should have some element. The limestone isn't packaged.
Okay, I don't know that DPAC read the resolution
I
yet.
have not yet.
Okay, go ahead then, please.
Would you like to see the last document?
No, well, I don't think so. What is the last one?
The
Oh,
site
the
plan.
plan.
Gives you an idea.
Okay, so it's kind of back from Stead Road then.
Correct.
Just about in the middle of the field, kind of, where they put that.
Yeah, I would have thought they would have maybe put it to one side, because they had one time had plans for baseball diamonds and horseshoe
Yeah.
pits and all that kind of stuff.
Seems like it's centralized if you look at
Yeah.
that drawing. kind of.
Okay, that's entirely up to them when they
Yes,
place it.
so that's
So, okay, let's have the resolution so we can move on here.
Resolved, council approved the 2020 requested grant to the Gull Lake Ratepayers Association in the amount of $5,950.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Sutherland, Councillor Horvath seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and carried. And our last grant that we're going to deal with today is the Red River North Tourism. And again, I think they did request more than the $8,000 because they wanted a per capita. But I guess in the comments here, I'm not sure why all the other tourism grants were included in here. Like, we're looking at only the Red River North Tourism.
Yes, there was a request to see who else was providing the funds, I think. And so the RMA Alexander is giving them $8,000, and we're providing them $8,000. The rest is a list of their expenses that they've identified.
Was it Alexander, sorry, or
Go ahead.
St. Andrews?
Yeah, I don't think it wouldn't be,
That's a very good point. I thought I saw an earlier email was Alexander. There might be a typo in this
Yeah, I think it's.
decision maker.
Okay, so we've made the decision then that we're only giving them the 8,000 and not the 13 that they asked for?
Correct, because our policy states no more than $8,000.
Go ahead, Councillor Vazzaro.
And over and above that, we are paying for the washrooms, like we call that tourism. Do we not?
Yeah, someone.
Yeah, it is related to tourism. Sandra, do you know, I know you sit on that committee, like, did St. Andrews give them the 8,000?
I contacted one of the counselors from over there, and yes.
Okay.
And actually, I believe that they were actually looking at more, because you know how they did come and do a presentation
Right.
but I was just inquiring to see what amount that they did pass in their budget.
They wanted 10, didn't they?
They wanted 13. And at the time, I was kind of saying that maybe we should give them like $1 per capita, which would be a little bit less than the 13, but 10, whatever, 870.
I think everything's different this year with COVID. They're trying to get stuff virtual. They're actually going to be doing the garden tour as a virtual.
Really?
Yes. So they're working, finishing that. I did have Marilee contact me, and she wanted to know about this, if we passed our budget yet. And the other thing that they were looking for, and they are trying to do a meet and greet yet together. So she was asking me about different venues in our RM to have it. So I did suggest a few of them to her. So they're going to try also and do a meet and greet.
Okay, when I read the comments here, maybe I'm not reading them correctly, but the request to council was for $8,000, RM of Alexander, which we think should be St. Andrews, confirmed $8,000 for 2020. This amount is paid out of the general tourism budget shown below, which has been annually $17,000 and remains the same for 2020. Out of this tourism budget in 2019, the following. So to me, that's telling me that that's out of our budget, not their budget.
Yeah, I read it the
Correct.
same.
Okay. Okay, so,
So, and just to go further, that doesn't include the washrooms.
No.
no,
So,
We could include that as part of it.
you know.
So they are getting their 13.
No, they're getting
No,
the
because
8,000
it's given
grant.
to different
Yeah,
organizations,
but-
right?
like we gave money last year to the Grand Marais Community Mural. We gave money to Home for the Holidays. It's not them giving it to these people, it's us giving it to them.
And
This is-
Interlake Tourism is another
Right.
different group.
Right.
That's another one that we give to.
So really, when it comes to tourism, we're not only paying Red River North Tourism, and it's not even a per capita, it's a flat $8,000, but we're paying all these other entities for grants. We're giving them grants for whatever they're doing also. So I'm good with the $8,000 for this year, and I mean, if it happens that they end up having some big event at the end of the year or whatever, and they need a little bit more money, maybe we can look at it a little bit more at that time, but I'm good with 8,000 for now. Go ahead,
Just
Deepak.
verified, Madam Mayor, and that is a typo. It shouldn't have been RM Alexander, it's St. Andrews, so we'll make that correction as well.
Okay, perfect. Okay, can we have a resolution then for this one?
Resolved, council approve the 2020 requested grant to the Red River North Tourism in the amount of $8,000.
Can I have a mover, Councillor Strang, second, Councillor Horvis, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, we have no bylaws, we have a number of communications for information. There's only one that I think I was going to talk about a little bit, maybe. Or maybe not. Deepak, was there anything that you wanted to,
Well, there's the major one.
yes, that's the one I was looking for, now I do see it.
And it's on the screen for you, Madam Mayor, if you'd like to.
Thank you, I've got it here now too. That is the announcement that was made last week by Minister Squires, and some of us were at our photo op last Friday. And it was in the backgrounder that the RM of St. Clements received $2.7 million for the Guns Creek diversion, and that is 100% grant. We don't have to pay anything toward that. But just kind of a bit of a sidebar, Deepak and I were both there, and you know, the minister comes out and I guess, you know, spoke, and Colleen Sklar spoke, because most of these grants were for municipalities within the Winnipeg Metro region, but it was not anywhere said who got the grants. We had to wait until we got the news release with this backgrounder. I mean, I knew it was coming, but it was actually, there was quite a number of people there. There was, most of the municipalities were there, so it was not a very long event, but I did take the ride up there. Go ahead, Councillor Sutherland.
Was Councillor Horwath in attendance?
Yes, he was.
Did he mention my name about
He
maybe
didn't
that?
speak, and I only spoke.
But I did mention
He
it.
was gonna
Yes, he
mention
did
my name,
mention
to
it.
name it
Didn't
after
I
me.
mention it?
Dave's diversion.
Yeah.
Dave's diversion, I did
Well,
mention
you
it.
mentioned it here, but I
No,
wanted you
no,
to.
Okay,
Oh, that's good, I'm happy, thank you.
okay, so then, the only other thing that I think is very important to all of us sitting around this table, and I'm gonna go back to the number, is 9.3.3. And that was an email that we received from the planning board. Our new development plan has been approved by the province, and at our next meeting in a couple of weeks, we will be giving it third reading. I can also tell you that one of the people that had a revision, wanted a revision that we ended up taking out, is pursuing it. He sent a letter to the deputy minister, so I'm not sure where that's gonna go, but
What was that, redesignation of a private property?
yeah, redesignation of a private property. And it was one that we supported, but in the end, as I explained to them, for the whole plan to go through, we thought it would be better if we just took a couple of the ones out that the province wasn't fully supporting. So they've decided, and I think it's probably going to, I guess, be pursued a little bit further with the province.
So,
Go ahead.
we'll all be given a copy of this development plan, I take it after the third reading, or?
Probably not, 'cause it's probably 300 pages,
Yeah,
but it will be online, or else we could
It'll be
maybe
online.
work on getting just our
What-
section done, but it's a little bit different because it's all 6 municipalities.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is, like, what in there stands out that's going to be affecting us directly? You know what I mean? Like, is there any big changes going on?
I don't believe that there's any big changes in our municipality.
Because you know how stuff starts to fly. Like
Well, I know, but really, any questions or comments should be directed to planning.
Mhm.
Like, I don't believe that any of us sitting around this table need to know everything that's in the development plan, because we don't administer it. It's up to the planning board, so. Councillor Spicer.
In this letter, though, it does say that there's been some changes made in order for it to go forward.
Right, and those are the ones that we had talked about previously. I think when Derek was here, there was 3 or 4 of them on that listing that the
Levo.
province wasn't supporting.
Oh, listen,
Okay, so it's those
It's
same
those,
ones.
it's nothing more than that,
Okay.
okay? Anything else that you wanted to add, Deepak?
Just for clarity, those changes for our community, as well as there were requested changes in other communities as well, as part of the
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah,
Okay, and I don't believe that there's anything else. Was there anything that you wanted to mention, Deepak?
Just on the Manitoba Good Roads, I think everyone's received that update, but there will be requesting for us to give out the awards
If we had
if we
winners.
have winners.
I don't think we had any winners last year. Like for this year.
For, no 2019 winners we're talking about.
No 2020 winners.
Oh, which goes up as yours?
Yeah. Because this is already for 2021.
That's right.
Yeah, we had no, I don't know if we had many submissions for 2020
That would have been submitted,
last
you
year.
didn't submit, remember?
Right, right. So this is for, even though they're doing the inspections and everything now, it would be for the Manitoba Good Roads Banquet in 2021. So. Okay, I guess it is now down to council reports, but I see that Greg is here, and I believe that he has some information to discuss in camera, and we will be breaking for supper soon, so I would imagine we should be going in camera now, and then we will have our supper break, and we will be back at 6 o'clock for the planning items for this evening. So with that, if I could have a resolution to go in camera, please, or did you have something else that you wanted to talk about first?
I am perfectly fine going straight to camera.
Okay, thank you.
Resolved council recess the regular meeting and go in camera to discuss the legal and personnel issues. And further be it resolved that all matters discussed are to remain confidential as per section 83(1)(d) of the Municipal Act.
Okay, Councillor Bazarowicz moves that, Councillor Strang seconds, any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, call the question, all those in favor, opposed, carried.
So we have to stop 2 recordings right now.